the vein occlusions, simple. Generally, the perception is that the fundus cases are very tough to handle, and the postgraduates have a fear and all that. So I'll try to kind of simplify and try to make it more approachable. Retinal vein occlusion is an entity with a lot of systemic importance. That is why you can be assured that you will definitely have a case in your exam. There are many entities like central retinal vein occlusion, hemiretinal vein occlusion, branch retinal vein occlusion, central retinal vein occlusion with cilioretinal vein occlusion. And invariably, coexisting diabetic or hypertensive retinopathy changes are there, and the postgraduates are often wondering what should they say, whether they should say a mixed retinopathy, a diabetic retinopathy, or vein occlusion. So I'll just try to make these things a little clearer in the next 10 minutes or so. First, I'll be a postgraduate and present a case. Here is a 55-year-old woman who presented with a sudden painless vision in her right eye, and it classically says visual acuity decreased upon waking up on the morning. So this is one important clue for all the postgraduates. If you are talking about vein occlusion versus artery occlusion typically says that while seeing there was a blackening and the vision went black. Whereas typically a vein occlusion, after sleeping in the night and lying down, the vein starts, the thrombotic process starts, and it usually evolves over. This is a very classical history that we had. The patient had occasional floaters, but no headache, eye pain, no visual complaints in the other eye. Past history said that there was mixed retinopathy in both eyes. Patient is a known case of diabetes and hypertension for 16 years and 10 years respectively. So I'm just giving you the findings of the right eye. So counting vision was counting fingers with no pinhole improvement. The important thing to measure over here is that the pupillary reaction was sluggish. So this is one important entity for us. So the slit lamp examination showed normal findings at Nexa, and this is a fundus picture. So I'm just putting down the findings here, and I'll tell you how to decipher each one step by step later. So there is marked vascular tortuosity here with multiple AV nicking and AV crossing changes, multiple intraretinal nerve fiber layer hemorrhages, soft exudates, all seen along the superior temporal arcade. And what is noticeable is again the narrowing of the arterioles and AV crossing changes. So here you have a classic VA crossing change. Multiple microaneurysms are also seen along the inferior temporal arcade. This is a finding. Now, the other eye, basically there was no such situation, but there was narrowing of the arterioles and AV changes. There was venous dilatation and multiple microaneurysms, dot, blot, hemorrhages. So this, now I have taken this case because you can definitely decide that there is a difference between this and this. So we'll just try to understand what is that. FFA showed a delayed filling of the superior temporal arcade, blocked fluorescence along the superior temporal arcade, multiple areas of leakage along the inferior temporal arcade corresponding to the microaneurysms. Right. Now, this is the OCT, and there was macular edema and there was subretinal fluid. The patient was lost to follow-up. She came after 3 months, and that at that time there was pain and watering in her right eye. The slit lamp examination showed NVI, and this is NVA, along with 2+ flare cells. The IOP in the right eye was 28 millimeters of mercury, and the gonioscopy was this, and the fundus definitely showed neovascularization of the disc. The OCT showed macular edema on this follow-up, and the diagnosis was superior temporal branch vein occlusion with macular edema, with PDR, with NVG, and grade 2 hypertensive retinopathy. So this, now from here, I want the postgraduates to just sit back and think. This is a composite diagnosis. There is vein occlusion, there is macular edema, there is diabetic retinopathy, hypertensive retinopathy, and you have to present all. Now, often the confusion is which to present first and what to say. Here, the acute event which preceded was the vein occlusion. So you shall put that as a first diagnosis, and the pre-existing changes like diabetic retinopathy and hypertensive retinopathy, which you have to mention as a part of diagnosis. So this forms your diagnosis. Now, that was my presentation. How, let's go easy now and try to understand how do we unravel this presentation. In the exam, you have about 20 minutes for fundus examination, and you are not really expected to give a composite diagnosis like this. So I, like, if you think if I don't give the entire diagnosis, am I going to fail? Definitely no. What you need to do is you need to describe the lesions, you need to analyze why this is happening and try to give a differential diagnosis and discuss the management plan. Like, you have to discuss the common management plan, and that is a very good presentation as far as a postgraduate concern. Please remember that you don't have time for history taking in a fundus case. You have to ask salient questions while you're doing your examination. So everything has to happen in the 20 minutes. Don't forget that you have to also draw your diagram simultaneously. And often the patient is, or the pupil is already dilated by the time the case is given to you. So how do we start deciphering the vein occlusion? So for this, now whatever the slides that I'm going to put are the various topics starting from anatomy of the retina to the most recent advances that the discussion can drag on. So this we all know. There are this is the retinal circulation, retinal blood supply, and the examiner can just ask you questions like this. Now, what if there is a hemorrhage in the nerve fiber layer? How will that look? You saw in that case, I'll be putting up the slide again, that there were hemorrhages in various layers. So if you know the configuration of each layer, you will be able to understand and explain why the hemorrhage is in that particular way. So whatever hemorrhage is in the nerve fiber layer, it is going to be the flame-shaped hemorrhages. Whatever is in the deeper layers will actually have to insinuate between the nuclei, and therefore it will have a dot or a blot hemorrhages. And definitely the superficial one is going to be more brighter, and the deeper hemorrhages are going to be more darker. The other common doubt the postgraduates have is that, can I say that nerve fiber layer hemorrhage is always due to vein occlusion, or dot blot hemorrhage is always due to diabetic retinopathy? Believe me, there is no such thing. This is the blood supply which is given to the inner layers of the retina by the retinal capillaries. So an event, an acute event like vein occlusion is happening in the superficial layers. Now, suppose if it is a subclinical or a milder one, it could affect any of the layers. So you may have corresponding darker hemorrhages, deeper hemorrhages. So with this in background, how do you go with a case? Now, you know that there is a fundus case which is kept dilated. So I don't think we should go even for distant direct ophthalmoscopy and direct ophthalmoscopy post corona era. So let's straight away start with indirect ophthalmoscopy. So I must tell you all that use this time to get yourself conversant with indirect ophthalmoscopy or slit lamp with 90D or 70D examination, 78D. Okay. Here, there are certain rules. Always start with media. Don't just jump. Another point I would like to say is, you often know the diagnosis. Like, you are told, okay, this is a vein occlusion case, so take this case. So what is it that you already know the diagnosis? Then what is the examiner expecting you to say? So it is not the diagnosis. It is the way you approach the case and the way you describe the various things. So always start with the media, because what can be there? There can be a vitreous hemorrhage. Next, go to the disc. This is a protocol of describing a fundus case. Describe the disc size, shape, color, margins, elevation, etc., like your regular protocol. Now, what questions can come to you at this point? Now, if the examiner asks you, what is the relation between the disc size and a vein occlusion? So this goes back to your basic knowledge and a theory, where you should be able to say that a small disc, crowded disc, is probably more prone for a central retinal vein occlusion. Next important thing, when you're looking at the disc, don't forget to look for some anomalies, like maybe there is a drusen, or there may be some vascular anomalies, there may be an optociliary shunt. So keep an eye on the anomalies of the disc. Look at the cup disc ratio. Why is the cup disc ratio important? Again, in a case of vein occlusion, you may think it is, are we just blindly following a protocol? No. because glaucoma can be one of the factors, especially in central retinal vein occlusion and a lot of times in a branch retinal vein occlusion case. So what are you doing? You're just following your template of media, disc, cup, vessels, and in each one, you will have to think laterally and try to relate it with your vein occlusion. Same way, continuing, look whether there is any edema and look at the peripapillary area. I'm sure all of you know this, and I'm just trying to tell you that don't straight away jump to the veins. Don't straight away start saying there's a vein occlusion. Never forget to tell your media, disc, and then go to the blood vessels and look at the AV crossing changes, look at the diabetic retinopathy changes without fail. And while you are doing this, you have some time to ask the patient whether he has any relevant questions you want to ask. You have the time. This is the time for you to ask. Right. So next common doubt the postgraduates have is that, shall I use this diagram? You know all of you know this. This is a Amsler-Dubois chart, which is classically used for depicting a retinal detachment, and this is the one. Now, how do we represent vein occlusion? How do we draw diabetic retinopathy in this chart? Because in this chart, if you're drawing the disc, believe me, it will be very, very small. So there is an alternative, which I teach all my postgraduates. You can use this posterior pole diagram. It is definitely accepted. You have to use where you draw a circle and you give a good importance to your disc, your vessels and macula. So your posterior pole has disc, vessels and macula. And this is a diagram which is enough to write in a case of vein occlusion, right? And here you can use blue for veins and red for arteries, hemorrhages, red again, and exudates in yellow. Okay, now we'll go back. We'll go back to our case. This is a case. Now, can we try to see what are the changes that are present here? Now, let us go by the protocol. The media appears a little hazy. Let's look at the disc. What is the size of the disc? It looks a little small. Shape is all right. There is some hyperemia. The margins are okay, except in some parts it's not so defined. And here definitely the margin is not well defined. You are seeing something fluffy sitting over there. That's a cottonwool spot. Next, come to the cup. The cup, you see a vessel, probably a cilioretinal arising here, and the cup appears normal and the cilioretinal is also perfused. So this is your disc. And there are no optociliary shunts. There are no other anomalous vessels over here, including NVD. So after this, at this point of time, I have an idea that there is no glaucoma, there is no NVD, but there are some cottonwool spots. Then I just move out and then I try to trace the vessels. Now, this is one branch and this is the other branch which has also already bifurcated. So the central retinal artery is all right. Central retinal vein is all right. And the hemiretinal vein is also all right. Now, next, when I trace the branching, as I trace the branching, there are a lot of hemorrhages. Now, how are these hemorrhages? Maybe not so clear in this picture. And this picture shows, look at their configuration. They are striate, they are flame shaped, telling us that they're mostly in the superficial layer. There are some hemorrhages which are blotchy and which appear deeper. And look at these are the red areas. And now look at these white areas, which are very superficial, obscuring the hemorrhage or adjacent to the hemorrhage, and they're nothing but cottonwool spots. So I'm sure that most of you can say this with a lot of confidence. So sorry, this is not a very good picture, but here I just wanted to put this picture because I wanted to show the sclerosed arteriole over here, right? So if you see a case like this, you will have to give due importance to hypertensive retinopathy. So you will have to grade that. I'm not going to speak about that. So same case over here. So you can see the sclerosed arterioles. So this case, along with vein occlusion, you will have to mention the arteriosclerotic changes and the hypertensive retinopathy changes, right? So this is another case, all the hemorrhage restricted to these areas. Fine. So I think you are able to describe this lesion. While you are doing this, while you are doing your fundus, you have to be having a mental checklist as to the age, hypertension, dyslipidemia. All these are predisposing factors which are available in your textbook, and it should run in your mind when you are examining the patient. It will happen only when you are relaxed and only when you have a checklist and you are going with your examination comfortably. Believe me, 20 minutes is more than enough to actually see and document the cases. Well, so just I think 2 minutes, I will just run through some clues. If the vision is very low, then probably you're looking at ischemic CRPO. But probably you're not able to evaluate the pupil because it's already dilated. So if you want to, you already know that the vision is low. Vision is given to you, age and some details of the patient, and vision is given to you. If the vision is very low, then you please look for the corroborative evidence of ischemic CRVO, which is cotton spots. And also believe me, even if there are no cotton spots, more red, more ischemia. Because what is red? It's a hemorrhage, and it's in fact a red infarct. A venous infarct always looks red. So if you recall our basic pathology, we'll be able to say that that's a venous infarct. So this is what we have to see in the disc, and you have to describe your vessels where there is tortuosity, where there is AV crossing changes, and the discussion can go on. Now, if you are asked by the examiner, what are the assessments that you do? This is a never forget to mention the routine checklist. Don't ever directly jump to FFA or OCT, because you have to mention the systemic basic evaluation. And in young patients, you have another battery of tests which is available in your textbooks. And remember your virtuous triad. Now, if the examiner asks you the etiology, okay, can you tell me some causes of this vasculitis? So what you need to remember? You just need to remember your virtuous triad, which says thrombosis happens if there is a vessel wall injury, if there is stasis, or if there is hypercoagulability. If you can very easily recall one or two reasons for this, uh, always remember vessel wall injury in retina is vasculitis. Please remember this. Next topic that can go for discussion is your macular edema. And if the examiner is asking you questions like what is optic nerve sheathotomy, chorioretinal anastomosis, believe me, you're passed and you're about to get a distinction. So in a retinal vein occlusion, another myth the postgraduates have is that only retinal vein occlusion will be asked. Not necessarily. The discussion will go on from retinal anatomy. It can be on glaucoma. It can be on management of macular edema, or it can just be on FFA, OCT, or lasers. So be prepared, keep an open mind, and it's never difficult. In fact, it is one of your scoring factors. So I think I'll just skip this and go to this diagnosis. So how is this different? What is glaring at you? The pallor is glaring. So, but you may say, okay, I'm seeing some artery over there. What is happening? It is reperfused, but this is a case of combined occlusion, central retinal artery and vein occlusion. Another example. So here you are seeing like whatever tomato splash appearance or whatever. This is and you are seeing a OCT picture with lot of cystoid spaces. This is another ischemic central retinal vein occlusion. So what is this case? This is a third case. So you are seeing a little different from all those. And this is, sorry, I'll just go back. And this, what you need to see is it's a hemiretinal vein occlusion. So you will see that there's a watershed zone and you will see more changes there. And this is a hemiretinal vein occlusion. So I'll just sum it up. You should know your red lesions and your yellow lesions. So your red lesions are for all your hemorrhages and the layers in which they are present. And the rules of presentation, I would say, is also for R stands for that. And know your yellow lesions. Where is a soft exudate? Where is a hard exudate? And why, I would say, is why. Why is this happening? Try to reason it out. And definitely you will get this, another corona. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya. I think the others can unmute themselves. So you talked about the blocks in the veins of our retina, mental blocks of the patient, our postgraduate students. So there are some questions. I'll start with Dr. Sandhya herself.
Yeah.
When you have a mixed retinopathy, Like you have diabetic changes, and how do we actually, describe the mixed retinopathy? When do you call that? So, what exactly we're going to describe it like?
Mixed retinopathy is where you have both diabetic and hypertensive retinopathy. Now, if you have, often the postgraduates have a confusion whether they're, now the cotton wool spots, they are present in both accelerated hypertension and in diabetic retinopathy. So what do we say? Look at the, that's what, again, I'll go back and say, look at your red lesions and your yellow lesions. So if you have prominent hemorrhages, nerve fiber layer hemorrhages, so it is a hypertension which has caused that acute bleed or the vein occlusion secondary to a arteriosclerotic change. If you have deeper hemorrhages, dot plot hemorrhages, predominantly in all the quadrants, venous bleeding, and your 4-to-1 rule, so the patient has significant diabetic retinopathy. So here, one clue for the postgraduates is to keep the age of the patient in mind. So we have some classification system called the Shees system or the Leishman system, where depending on the age of the blood vessels, the vascular changes have to be accredited to. So coming back to your question, a patient may have arteriosclerotic fundus and only NPDR changes. So think of that and say that it is predominantly diabetic retinopathy. If the hypertensive retinopathy is also causing changes, you have to account for those lesions, like maybe hard exudates, or if they have associated nephropathy, macular fan-like lesion or macular star-like lesion. So mixed retinopathy is where you can pinpoint down both diabetic retinopathy changes and hypertensive retinopathy changes.
Thank you. I think we have one question, Dr. Guru Prasad, and after which we can start his presentation. Sir, is there like a non-ischemic and ischemic BRVO? And BRVO, inferior BRVO, can it cause macular edema? These are the questions from some PGs.
Yeah, I think just like CRVO has the two types of occlusions, like the non-ischemic and the ischemic. So also BRVO can have. In fact, it has been described in the BBO study. More than 5 disc areas of non-perfusion on FFA. FFA was not done at all for 6 months actually. After 6 months, they found that if more than 5 disc areas of non-perfusion was present, it was taken as ischemic BRVO and then they were treated. So they were actually not treating any cases until 6 months and treating only at the end of 6 months after an FFA. So there is an entity, non-ischemic and ischemic BRVO, depending on the signs. For example, the quantum of hemorrhages, the visual acuity, the quantum of hemorrhages, the RAPD, if at all. Usually RAPD is a feature of CRVO, but not of a BRVO. BRVO, because it is usually one tributary. The other 3 quadrants will be functioning well, and RAPD does not figure very much in BRVO. But then as I said, the quantum of hemorrhages, the extent of hemorrhages, the extent of macular edema nowadays on an OCT, the cotton wool spots, the visual acuity, and the non-perfusion non-FFA, all these can guide us to classify between ischemic and non-ischemic BRVO. So there is definitely a scope for classification in BRVO as well. Secondly, the second question that you asked was about the inferior vein occlusion, inferior branch vein occlusion. In fact, inferior branch vein occlusion also drains the inferior half of the macula. The inferior vein drains the inferior half of the macula, and therefore almost 180 degrees of the inferior macula can become ischemic by an inferior branch vein occlusion. And therefore it is almost equally risky to have an inferior branch vein occlusion, if not more, as compared to a superior branch vein occlusion. So both are equally have the propensity to cause macular edema.
Thank you, sir. Can you start sharing your slides?
Yeah.
Okay, we have another very important case that normally comes up in the exam.